You're listening to Sharky on sharkgoeschomp. Tonight we have two stories involving the Easter Bunny. Untitled, submitted by Kitty Purry 83. When I was younger, I used to live by the woods and could see a cemetery from my back porch. One Easter, I remember waking up and seeing the Easter Bunny, one of those terrifying costumes. And what really gets me is I remember smelling the wet hay. When I woke up, I didn't tell anyone, but there was an extra Easter egg in my house that my parents didn't hide. Years later, when I was in high school, I asked my parents if they ever dressed up like the Easter Bunny and came into my room. They said they would never go through so much trouble. Then my younger sister, who I shared a bunk bed with when this all happened, said she remembers the Easter Bunny came into our room and made a remark about the hay smell. I was terrified that we both remembered seeing a person dressed as a bunny in our room. To make it even stranger, I told the friends I sat with at lunch about what happened. One of the girls was my neighbor across the street, and she told me one Easter, a long time ago, that she looked out her window during the night and saw the Easter Bunny standing in her driveway. I had chills. To this day, I am terrified of people in rabbit costumes. Untitled, submitted by Kitty Purry 83. When I was younger, I used to live by the woods and could see a cemetery from my back porch. One Easter, I remember waking up and seeing the Easter Bunny, one of those terrifying costumes. And what really gets me is I remember smelling the wet hay. When I woke up, I didn't tell anyone, but there was an extra Easter egg in my house that my parents didn't hide. Years later, when I was in high school, I asked my parents if they ever dressed up like the Easter Bunny and came into my room. They said they would never go through so much trouble. Then my younger sister, who I shared a bunk bed with when this all happened, said she remembers the Easter Bunny came into our room and made a remark about the hay smell. I was terrified that we both remembered seeing a person dressed as a bunny in our room. To make it even stranger, I told the friends I sat with at lunch about what happened. One of the girls was my neighbor across the street, and she told me one Easter, a long time ago, that she looked out her window during the night and saw the Easter Bunny standing in her driveway. I had chills. To this day, I am terrified of people in rabbit costumes. Something pretending to be the Easter Bunny paid a visit to my kids. Submitted by Manon Lysette. I woke up this morning to the sound of giggling coming from the living room. Crap, I grumbled. Groaned Clara. We forgot to set the alarm, I said, looking at the bay of Easter chocolates in the corner. We still needed to set up the egg hunt. Clara rolled over and mumbled, "We'll tell the kids the Easter Bunny got held up. Busy racing a turtle or something." Someone had to do damage control, and I could tell Clara wasn't going to get out of bed anytime soon. I tried going in for a kiss, but when I saw dried saliva crusted around Clara's mouth, I changed my mind. Besides, she was already snoring by the time my face reached hers. Sighing, I left my cozy blanket and reached for yesterday's jeans, which were lying unceremoniously in a pile of dirty clothes next to my bed. As I stuck my legs clumsily through the openings, I noticed the clock. 3:16 a.m. My kids were never up that early, even on Easter. I turned to my wife. "Babe, You're the best, I said in a mock feminine voice. Thanks for taking care of it, you sexy thing. Okay, I might have been a little irked at her. As I was about to exit the room, I heard a sound outside my door. At first, I thought it was David's padded Cookie Monster slippers, but the taps were followed by a clicking sound, not unlike that of a dog's nails hitting the linoleum floor. I hope the kids hadn't let the neighbor's flea-infested mutt inside again. I deduct half their Easter chocolates if that was the case. I knelt down and peered under the door to try and confirm my suspicions without letting the dog in. Fleas in the bedroom? No thanks. What I saw made me do a double take, which resulted in my slapping my cheek against the floor. It was no dog, that's for sure. The animal had elongated black feet, half covered in black patchy fur, half in blistering dark skin. On the edge of its bony toes were long claws clicking against the ground. What the fuck is that? I said. My words carried through the paper-thin walls and startled the creature. It hopped out of sight, and I could hear it tapping all the way down the hall. Meanwhile, the turbo engine snores continued behind me, unperturbed. I sat on my rump in stunned silence, wondering what kind of mangy animal had found its way into my home, and how it had managed to do so in the first place. Judging by the size of its feet, it couldn't have made it through the cat's door. No way. Unless it was a raccoon. Those jerks could get in anywhere. I was trying to come up with a plan of attack when I heard the kids giggling again. A pang of panic zapped through me like one of those prank handshake buzzers. The kids weren't safely tucked away in their beds, no. They were out there with God knows what, that filthy beast had snuck inside. I grabbed my bat, my wife kept on her side of the bed, and dashed out of my room. A warm and wet substance was waiting for me on the other side of the door, which I only noticed after stepping in it. Cringing, I looked down, hoping it wasn't another fur ball. The floor was covered in a thick, brownish liquid, and my first thought was blood. I could see it leading all the way down the hallway. Either it belonged to the creature, or one of my kids was bleeding profusely. Both options terrified me, especially since wounded creatures tend to be more violent. I prayed David and Becky were all right. Sidestepping the streaky liquid, I ran towards the living room. "Becky? David, are you okay?" I shouted in an alarmed tone as I rounded the corner. It took me a few minutes to take in the scene, and I did so in multiple stages. First, I ignored the creature entirely, scanning the kids for any injuries. Next, I tried to figure out if they were in any immediate danger, say about to get mauled by a rabid mountain lion or something. Finally, I searched for the animal I had spied from under my bedroom door. The kids seemed fine and happy. Nothing was actively moving towards them, and the creature was... oh God. David was sitting on the horrid thing. The monster loosely resembled a hare, but it was far from an adorable woodland creature. Quite the opposite. Since it was seated, it was hard to gauge its exact size, but if I were to put a number on it, I'd say it was about 4.5 feet tall. It emitted a strange and powerful odor, like chocolate laced with vinegar. The scent was so strong it made my eyes water. Its body was grotesquely lean, like a starving animal in the middle of winter. Its fur was patchy, rigid, and it looked to be covered in melted chocolate. The substance dripped off at the ends of its twisted whiskers, and it seemed to perpetually ooze out of its mouth. Its two buck teeth were rotted and chipped. Its ears looked mangled and were gnarled off at the ends. Its eyes were the worst, though. You know those creepy sugar eyes on Easter chocolate animals? That's exactly what they look like. Soulless, unblinking, cartoonish eyes. David was sitting on this thing's lap. He had a big grin on his face, petting along its disheveled, gooey fur. His fingers made the sound of a slug racing down a slip and slide. "Look, Daddy, the Easter Bunny's here," said David. Becky reached a hand to pet the thing's decrepit form. "He's so soft," she chirped. Something told me they weren't seeing the grotesque figure for what it truly was. I knew my kids. The size of a cartoon monster could give them nightmares for weeks. There was no way they'd be so calm if they realized what they were actually playing with. "Becky, David, come here," I told them as calmly as I could. "But Daddy, we're playing with the Easter Bunny," answered my daughter. I held my hands out to my children, trying my best not to let my growing panic show. I didn't know what the beast would do if it sensed danger, and I didn't want to freak my kids out in the first place. The rabbit's head turned towards me, but it was impossible to tell what those unfocused eyes were looking at exactly. It wrapped its short arms around my boy in a tight hug. I knew what it was thinking. It had no intention of returning my boy. My fingers tightened around my bat. "Becky, Matilda Carter, come here this instant," I ordered, my voice stern this time. My daughter complied, but gave me a bit of a pout. Hey, I didn't care. I needed to get her to safety, even if that meant looking like the bad guy. The rabbit hissed in response. "Go to your room. Don't open the door unless it's me or your mom, okay?" I said. "But Dad," she protested. "Becky, now!" I barked. Head held down, Becky dragged herself down the hall. I waited while my heart thrashed wildly in my chest until I heard her bedroom door shut. For a split second I felt relieved, but then the fear came flooding back when I returned my attention to the Easter Bunny. He was still hissing, chocolate syrup slowly drizzling along the top of my son's head. "David, sport, can you come here?" I asked, hoping he'd be able to squeeze out of the creature's bony arms. I took a step towards them, and the creature reacted by growling lightly and gripping my son tighter. David started crying. I stopped in my tracks, unsure of what to do. It was a standoff. "Daddy, you're scaring the Easter Bunny. He won't give us candy if you scare him," pleaded my son, as he continued to be pelted with more and more chocolate. "That's not the Easter Bunny. Come here and we'll talk about it, okay?" I requested, spreading my arms out to my child. "Daddy will give you more candy than Halloween and Easter combined, okay?" David smiled and tried to get off the rabbit. The creature went absolutely wild, thrashing its head about in every direction while hissing and growling nonstop. Its thick brown saliva came flooding out of its mouth quicker than before, rapidly enveloping my son. I had to do something, but footsteps behind me caught my attention. "Daddy, is the Easter Bunny sick?" asked my daughter, tears in her eyes. I think she was seeing the same thing I was. I didn't have time to scold Becky for coming back. In that moment it took for me to turn towards her, the creature managed to fully encase my son in a thick veil of melted chocolate. I could hear him gurgling and gaggling as it quickly hardened around him. "Let go of my kid, you son of a bitch!" I screamed, running toward the creature. My whole being cried out for an unrestrained act of violence. No one messes with my kids and gets away with it after all. I reared the baseball bat back and ran forward to swing at the creature. As I approached the monster, something strange happened to me. In an instant, all the anger seemed to evaporate from my soul. The sounds of my son gurgling, the creature hissing, and my daughter crying all disappeared. I could hear the chirps of spring birds and what sounded like a pleasant stream in the distance. In front of me stood a large, soft white bunny with a basket full of eggs. I felt calm and at peace. If it wasn't for the fantastic force of physics known as inertia, I might have fallen victim to the illusion. As luck would have it, however, my action was already being executed, and my swing successfully followed through, striking the creature square across the head. An unearthly cackle echoed in the living room. My stomach twisted with worry. Hopefully I hadn't hit my son by accident. The next thing I knew, the bunny and its devilish counterpart were gone. In its place was a tall, hollow, and headless chocolate bunny. David was still encased in a cocoon of chocolate, but I quickly freed him while my daughter sobbed nearby. Thankfully, he was okay. I held him in my arms as though I was cradling a baby. In a way I was. My baby. Feeling overwhelmingly grateful that both my children had survived. Once we had calmed down, I started cleaning up the mess. In the corner of my living room, I found a pile of crushed chocolate, which I knew was a rabbit's head. The thing that really got to me were its eyes. You know how I said they were solid sugar? As much as that creeped me out when they were attached to him, they managed to completely horrify me when I found them lying amidst the rubble. I wasn't looking at fake candy eyes anymore. I was looking at appalling, stomach-turning, biologically accurate round eyeballs, just like the ones in a high school science class. Now, I can't say for sure whether what I saw was the real Easter Bunny or some sort of demon masquerading as him. Either way, I don't think I'll ever eat Easter chocolate again. Not now that I know what it's made of. This is Sharky with sharkgoeschomp. Please subscribe for more stories and let me know if you had any encounters with creatures of our holidays. Have a good night.